Hi, Telltale back again with another book review. I'm Greg.
I'm Emily.
And tonight we have H.P. Lovecraft's The Dunwich Horror, one of his greatest
I love this cover.
old Cthulhu mythos stories.
I just want to show you guys this cover. I'm trying not to make it be blurry. I love the illustration, that typography. That dust jacket is beautiful. Love it.
And unfortunately, that illustration is not on more recent editions. Talk a little bit about this. This is an Arkham House edition. I bought it from Arkham House. I had to special order it in the early 1980s because it wasn't available in stores. Not many stores carried them. Arkham House was a specialty publisher that was founded in the late 1930s after Lovecraft's death by August Derleth here in Wisconsin, Sauk City.
Mm-hmm.
With the mission of keeping Lovecraft's work alive. There was a long time when H.P. Lovecraft was seen as just another hack pulp writer, and his fiction was not very well known. And so the only way you could come upon it was to buy a book from Arkham House. Mm-hmm. And this particular book, The Dunwich Horror and Others, was first published in the early 1960s. This copy was published in the early 1980s. I bought this about 1981 when I was in high school. I had to special order it through a bookstore because you just couldn't find H.P. Lovecraft on bookstore shelves. It didn't exist. Now it's everywhere.
Yeah. He's reemerged.
But the interesting thing, the reason why you can't get this edition in newer Arkham House printings is because August Derleth heavily edited Lovecraft's work before he published these collections. So the texts of all the stories in this book are not what was published in the original magazine appearances. They were changed. I haven't done a word-for-word comparison to find out exactly how much or what was changed, but in the mid-1980s, Arkham House came out revealing this fact that their books were not the original Lovecraft texts, and they redid all of these Lovecraft books in new editions with the corrected texts. So in 1986-1987, they reprinted The Dunwich Horror and Others and 4 other books of Lovecraft's work that they published with the correct texts in them. So this book is bastard text.
Yeah, pretty much.
But
great illustration.
Great illustration.
Yeah.
So they hired a different illustrator to do the cover on the corrected version, and it's a full color illustration. It's nice in some ways, but no, it's not like that. That is a really cool illustration, and but it looks like a 1940s book. It really does.
It looks really nice.
And these old Arkham House books are wonderful, but you can't really get new Arkham House books anymore. They're not publishing anything anymore. You go to their website, it looks like they're still selling them, but you try to buy any of them, all I get is emails saying, sorry, it's not available.
Yeah. No more copies.
So I don't know why they don't just pull the plug on their website or something. But
archiving purposes? I don't know.
Yeah, forget going to Arkham House to buy anything because you'll just get an email saying it's not available. So you'll have to look on the used shelves. And so then if you really want this edition, you can get this used if you go to abebooks or biblio.com and look it up. Probably even through Amazon, you'll find used copies of this book and reasonably priced, about $30. You can get a good copy of this exact book. Anyway, The Dunwich Horror is a Cthulhu mythos story published in Weird Tales magazine in April 1929. And I'll let you go with a synopsis.
All right. So there's this weird-ass family, right? Living in the middle of Hicksville nowhere. And the whole town is, like, really scared of them. Because, like, weird stuff always happens, and they're, like, just a really ugly inbred family. I think the daughter's, like, an albino.
Didn't you see this movie, like, in the 1980s?
Probably. I don't know. It could be. Yeah. So she's
Sounds like an X-Files
I know.
episode.
It's like another strange occurrence in Midwest America. Except this is out east. Anyway.
Sorry.
Yeah. But it's, So basically, this family is just into weird stuff. Like, people claim that they see fires in pyres being burned up on the hills, and weird sounds that are not human, and screams come from the hills all the time. And then they just see this family like sauntering back. And at one point, the daughter, who's an albino, gets pregnant. And after she gives birth, the child grows up rapidly fast. By like age 9, he's 6'7" and looks like a grown man, but also not at all a man. He kind of looks humanoid, but more animal-like, kind of little piggy face here. Animals always seem to like be really repulsed by him and really scared. And they keep making these strange alterations to buildings on their property and their home. And they keep buying cattle, but the count of cattle that are out in the field isn't changing. And like animals are going missing, and weird stuff just keeps occurring. Until eventually, like, the daughter and this person, what's his name? Alan? I can't remember.
I can't remember
his name. Yeah, I can't remember his name, but the mother and the grandfather end up dying, and he's just kind of continuing this process of buying cattle, and he starts looking around particular libraries very earnestly for some really dark occult material, and people are trying to like, there's like this sense of urgency building in him until one day he actually breaks into, I think it was the library at the Miskatonic University, and ends up getting attacked and killed by a dog. But when the rest of the people, like when the librarian and security show up, they realize like this is not human at all. He's got like tentacles on his legs and eyes around his waist, and definitely not at all human. But by the end of the day, the body just dissolves. And nobody...
His name was Wilbur Watley, something like
Wilbur, that's what it was. His name is Wilbur. But now they run into another situation where whatever he was coming to get was to complete a spell or something. And there's this invisible being that's running around Dunwich, destroying houses, and people can't see it, but they can hear it. They can find footprints, they can find trails, they can find all kinds of stuff. But whatever this thing is, nobody has seen it. But it's destroying houses and killing people all throughout town. So eventually they have these two guys, like the security guard, some other guy, like an investigator, and the librarian from the Miskatonic University come to Dunwich when they hear this has been going on. And they basically like go and follow the trail of this invisible monster and defeat it, while the townspeople are trying to look through a looking glass across the hills, seeing if they can see anything of what's happening on the other side. So they do end up defeating this invisible being, but in much duress, as it is dying, it kind of becomes visible for a second, and everybody just loses their freaking minds. Like, people leave the community, nobody talks about it anymore. Those who don't leave the community just are living in a slum where it's like a ghost town with a couple of like people who are just boarded up in their houses and stuff. It's really crazy situation. So yeah, that's the Dunwich Horror.
And well, to spoil it,
yeah,
Wilbur is the product of a being from another dimension trying to come through into our dimension in order to do nasty things to everybody.
He's an alien halfling.
Yeah. So the story draws heavily upon a couple of stories by classic writers. One is called The Horla by Guy de Maupassant, which has an invisible creature being fought. And another one is called What Was It by Fitzjames O'Brien. Fitzjames O'Brien was a contemporary of Edgar Allan Poe, and he wrote what is thought to be the first invisible creature story. What Was It? And so those two stories may or may not have been read by Lovecraft and influenced him, but they're definitely in that same kind of subgenre of the invisible monster. Lovecraft takes it and marries it with his Cthulhu mythos and creates a portal horror, which fits with our theme of the month, portal fantasies, and creates the story isn't really scary.
No, it's kind of like a cryptozoology thing. Really?
It's more just wildly imaginative.
Yeah.
It's cool from that standpoint, but it's not going to keep you up late night because
It sucks that
it's
something
just
invisible
so,
killed some people and trampled them to death. But I think it
yeah.
was just clumsy and big and
But
didn't know.
it's just so way out there that
Yeah.
you're not going to feel like this is real.
No. It's definitely a fiction. There's nothing about it that it's so almost too fantastic to be
which
scary.
is how I find all of Lovecraft's work. I don't find it to be terrifying. I find it to be fascinating for the degree of imagination the man had.
Yes. For sure.
And he also, lovers of Greek mythology may see this as kind of a twisted version of the way that Zeus played around with mortal women all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was Shoggoth? Or I can't remember what elder god or being they were trying to bring through the portal originally. Or like who they were summoning specifically. But this is interesting for our portal fantasy / portal horror things, because instead of going through the portal to the other world, we're bringing something through a portal to ours. And that's kind of, I think, one thing that's really interesting too. The cryptozoology element of it is kind of interesting because this isn't a mythical creature as we understand it.
Yeah.
This kind of, I feel like Wilbur himself is kind of like almost a satyr feeling creature, or like Pan or anything like that, where it's like this half human, half something else, and it's half something else mostly from the waist down.
Yeah.
So I think that was really interesting how you kind of play with that concept with this as well. It feels more like fairy tale.
Yeah.
Than anything, but
and
not
I think
quite.
that was intentional on Lovecraft's part. He did read all that stuff and was knowledgeable about all the mythology and different religions and different fairy tales and other stories, Gothic stories, things like that. He had a wealth of knowledge of all that literature, and I think he drew upon that and then just kind of twisted it around until it became something really grotesque, and at least in the 1920s was probably very terrifying to readers at that time because they'd never read anything like it.
I liked it too because I liked that they kept having to build bigger buildings as they fed the creature, even though no one could see it. Like at one point they take out the floor between the first and second level because the being is like living in their house. But nobody knows it. Like, and they can't see it. So it's like they have this giant looming creature that's in their home that they keep building a bigger hodgepodge weird house with a ramp up to the second floor that isn't there to bring cows into. Like, I think that's just really interesting how he did that and thought of that. Like, yeah, we're just housing this random creature. And then one day it busts out of the house and the house just explodes for no reason. Okay, that's cool. I really like that, though. I thought that was very interesting. Like, they were hiding it in plain sight the whole time. Nobody had any idea. Like, people would get the heebie-jeebies, but animals were the most affected, which also kind of plays into that interesting, like, cryptozoology feel. Like, other animals avoid the Loch Ness Monster. Other animals avoid the Yeti. So they're kind of playing, I feel like he's playing into that a little bit too. So it was really, it just was really interesting though, how you have this invisible being that this family definitely knows is there. It's growing in their house. And it's hiding in plain sight and dangerous as hell.
And the part that's hard to fathom is they feed it.
Yeah. Like, how does it eat?
They don't run screaming, it's
yeah, like they're totally fine with this, like you're just gonna be okay with that thing in their house. But the whole point of it is like they were part of the ancient cult. But I like that this takes place in like podunk middle of nowhere hick town full of agricultural people. Nobody bats an eye at anything they're doing other than, that's kind of weird that they keep buying cows, but the cattle in the field is no different than it was a month ago, kind of thing. Like, oh, okay.
But
it's just really funny.
The followers of the cults of Cthulhu in Lovecraft's story, that kind of brings up something that I have a difficult time fathoming in our real world with accusations of devil worship is that what kind of a moron would worship and help a being whose sole goal is to destroy everything? Don't you think you're going to get destroyed too?
Yeah, it's kind of... I play with that a little bit too, because we think it's this... Like, you think the community are the dumb ones for not realizing something's going on. But really, it's this inbred family who are the dumb ones because they're just led to believe that this is what they should be doing. They don't question it. And they just let this intergalactic invisible creature live in their home and eventually destroy the world.
Yeah.
Like, there's... As far as we know in any of Lovecraft's mythos, nobody has made any promises of glory for doing this. And there are several occasions in which people are trying to pull things out of other realms or bring the old gods back in some form or another.
Yeah.
And absolutely none of them communicates any kind of promise of glory or fame or success or an afterlife or anything. In light of this.
Yeah, in Lovecraft's mythology especially, Cthulhu is definitely hell-bent on killing everybody, and the elder gods just don't care.
Yeah.
And it's like
whatever.
People are worshiping these... Wait a minute.
Yeah, I think that's what's that is so interesting about it, is like, what possesses these individuals to want to do that?
And maybe Lovecraft is kind of, in a backhand way, making a commentary about that kind of cult mentality of people that follow, people that drink the Kool-Aid.
Yeah, essentially.
Didn't they have a clue?
Yeah. No, I think that's exactly what he's doing. I think he himself was more of a agnostic, and I think he kind of was like, well, why believe if you're not allowed to question?
Yeah.
And the dangers of not questioning. So I definitely think that's something he played into very intentionally.
Yeah.
Just knowing some of his other writings and essays and his opinions on other things, I am not at all surprised that wouldn't be some kind of satire for organized religion or cults of any kind.
Yeah.
So
less organized religion, more the cult ones, like the Jim Joneses and stuff like that. It's really hard for everybody else to sit back and go, well, yeah, that made sense. No, it didn't. It made no sense whatsoever.
It just speaks to the ability of people being brainwashed by things they don't understand.
How gullible people are, yeah.
But honestly, I can't say that, like, if an alien came down from the heavens and showed up, you would have to color me very surprised, and I would be very probably questioning a lot of what I believe. I don't think anybody wouldn't question what they believe. Having encountered something that was so outside of them. So maybe that was the point too, is what do you do when this being who seems all powerful and so outside of the world you've ever seen, don't you just obey it unless it kills you? Or just like prolong your own life? You know what I mean? So I mean, it does play into a lot of questions about human nature and what will we do if we encounter something like that? Or what do we do when we encounter cult beliefs? Or what do we do when we notice our neighbors are doing crazy things in the field over there? Like, it just speaks a lot to the human nature and animal nature even. It brings the animal element into it, where the belief that animals can sense evil before people even can, kind of thing, that they have a higher level of intelligence. I think Lovecraft does that a lot in a lot of his stories, and I think this is a really, really good... I think it's done specifically very well in this version, in the Dunwich Horror. Yeah. It's a really good story. Love it.
Yes, it is. So I'm assuming this is a top tale.
Yes, it is. It is a top tale.
Yeah. Is there anything by Lovecraft that won't make it? Well,
I mean, there's
did
a
one.
couple.
The Alchemist. It was a good... It was a good story, but not as good as Dunwich Horror or Color Out of Space.
Yeah, The Witch's House was okay, but I don't know
The Witch's House. I can't remember
It's
that
kind
one.
of outside of his Cthulhu mythos.
Okay.
It's about a guy who rents a room in a home and weird shit
Oh,
happens.
Dreams of the Witch House?
Yes, Dreams of the Witch House.
Oh, that's a cool story, though.
See, I didn't... That's another review. I didn't think it was that great.
Head? Oh,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
I didn't think that it was that great. But
a lot
it
of
was
people
good.
Are
It wasn't
disturbed
great.
because in that one, I guess some of his racist ideas start coming
Yes,
into it.
I think that's probably what repelled me the most. And like they kind of poke. I had a hard time that the only one who had wisdom was the guy who was religious, and they
Okay.
spent so much time poking fun at him that it felt kind of like, but he's the only one who's like, just don't mess with it, guys. Come on, stop poking the bear.
Mhm.
Like, you're gonna get in trouble. And he was the only voice of reason in the whole thing, even though he was an eccentric and a little bit of a zealot about his faith. I've had a hard time with that though, because it's like, you guys could have just listened. Like, if these things keep reoccurring and you keep getting hurt or people are dying or weird crap is happening, I think I just got frustrated, I think, with the main characters.
Okay.
Because they didn't listen to the voice of reason.
It's been too many years since I read that one.
Yeah. So it's not my favorite. I mean, it's a
Okay.
good story, but it's just not my favorite Lovecraft story.
Right. So Lovecraft did write some that aren't as good as Dunwich Horror, but there's so many good Lovecraft
There
stories.
really are.
I think this is the third one that's made it on our list, so I'm sure there's more to come.
Yay!
I got a whole book.
Yeah, I'm going through the entire works of H.P. Lovecraft right now, including his essays and poems.
I am too. I'm going back through it, but in the order that he wrote.
Yeah, the nice thing is I have a digital version, a digital copy of it that I got that actually has them in chronological order and tells you all of the like bibliography of it right on
cool.
on the intro page for the story, so you know
Okay.
what it was written in, when, periodicals, names, all that thing, sort of stuff. So it was really cool.
The
I like that a
Outsider.
lot.
That's my all-time favorite Lovecraft.
The Outsider.
The Outsider.
That's a good
Great story.
one.
Okay, so time for us to move on and,
Yeah.
and record our next review.
Yeah. So thanks, guys. Like, subscribe. Let us know your thoughts on the Dunwich Horror or anything else H.P. Lovecraft, because we could talk about him for days.
Yes.
No joke. So like, comment, subscribe, and we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.